Hey guys, this is Heath Wright from the group Ricochet, and you're listening to the Midwest Mixtape Podcast. Keep it here.
She's got her daddy's money, her mama's good looks, more laughs than a stack of comic books. A wild imagination, a college education, add it all up, it's a deadly combination. She's a good bass fisher, a dynamite kisser, country as a turnip green. She's got her daddy's money, her mama's good looks, and look who's looking at me.
Hi, and welcome to the Midwest Mixtape Podcast, live from the Barn Studios in Southeast Missouri. You got the Mox here, and I'm joined with a special guest online right now. Coming into town tomorrow, we have Heath from Ricochet. Heath, how are you, man?
Well, Chad, I'm doing fine, brother. How are you?
Doing good. You're phoning in from Oklahoma, I hear. Home
Yeah.
base there, right?
I'm here at the Rockin' W Ranch. It's the little ranch I grew up on, and it's the ranch I'll die on. So I was just talking to you before we went live that we just came from Montana. We did a little run up north. We were 10 miles from the Canadian border Saturday night, and man, the weather is so beautiful there in the summer months. Of course, I don't think I'm cowboy enough to handle those winters, those Montana winters.
Yeah.
But after about 2 weeks of breaking ice during an Oklahoma winter, I'm like, I'm done with this. I used to really love winter, but now none of after this breaking ice every single day, But shoot, if I had me a little log cabin somewhere on the creek, or on a river in Montana, I just sit on the front porch and drink coffee all day,
It's so beautiful country up there. It's just unbelievable just to take in the beautiful scenery. And I love that part of the country.
Me too. It's gorgeous. Hey, but we're coming to Missouri Friday night, Washington County Fair, brother.
Washington County Fair, Potosi, Missouri, Friday, August 9th. This is a last-minute show, I hear. Like, this just got added. How did that happen?
It did just get added. My buddy Jason Pritchett had some personnel issues with his band members, and he had some band members that pulled out on him on the last minute. And even me, I'm going to be playing with just a partial band. We're doing what we call the Ricochet intimate set. Sort of, we're just going to get unplugged and untucked, and we're going to get acoustic on you guys. I'm going to bring out my acoustic girlfriend, my little acoustic guitar. That's what I call her, my acoustic girlfriend. And we're going to just do some acoustic songs for you guys all night. My drummer has he's got a family event that he can't get out of. It's a memorial service, so he can't be there on that particular day. And like I said, it was a last minute addition. Just 2 days ago, I want to say 2 or 3 days ago is when Jason got in touch with me to find out if we were open. Just so happens that we were open, and our next show was at another town in Missouri, about 135 miles away. So, it didn't conflict with any radius clauses and any contracts. So I said, yeah, we can help you out, but we're going to have to do it as a four-piece. So it's going to be fun. And we hardly ever do these acoustic shows. So, the good folks there in Potosi are going to get to see something that hardly ever happens in Ricochet world.
Sounds like it's going to be special. And I was going to mention that if you live in Missouri and you are a Ricochet fan, there's no excuse for you not to catch Ricochet. You're playing Missouri 3 times in the next month. Obviously tomorrow at the Washington County Fair in Potosi, but then the next night, Saturday, August 10th in Campbell, Missouri for the Missouri Peach Fair. And then September 6th at Silver Dollar City in Branson, Missouri. So there's no excuse. If you're a fan, you got to get out and catch these guys, right?
That's right. And we played a Missouri date just a couple of weeks ago. We were a little club called the Country Club Bar and Grill, and that was a last minute addition as well. Just something I was working on to try to fill in some dates. Man, gosh dang it. The name of that town, Fayette? No, that's not right. Anyway,
Fayette, Missouri, near Columbia?
Exactly. Very close to Columbia. Am I saying it right?
Fayette, Missouri. That's actually where I went to college at. It was a little small college town.
Yeah, exactly. So, we played a little pop-up show at a little club there, and it was fun. We played, I still love playing Missouri because you just mentioned Columbia. We got our start in Columbia, Missouri. There was a club back in the 90s called the Silver Bullet Bar and Grill, and we used to play there all the time. That's actually how we got our name. The guy that owned it was our manager at the time. And he, the band was in need of a new name. We were going through a transitional phase, and we needed to kind of rebrand the name of the group. And he said, well, why don't we just call you the Silver Bullet Band? I'm like, no, Steve, you idiot. We can't do that. Bob Seger's been doing that for 30 something years now. So anyway,
you might hear from a lawyer or an attorney.
Yeah, exactly. So his wife Paula came up with this cool idea. She said she thought it would look cool on the sign if the Silver Bullet presents Ricochet. I liked it. It was 3 syllables, 1 word. I didn't realize at the time how difficult it was to spell for most people, because we are at the time used to tell people. At the time, Shenandoah had broken up. They weren't together touring anymore. And I said, since Shenandoah broke up, we're the most misspelled band in country music. Yeah, but Shenandoah's back together now, so they may have taken over that top spot. I don't know.
I think one of the things that's so admirable about your career, you guys are considered the hardest working band in country music. And even, we're talking decades long at this point. You're still on the road. You're still going out playing all these dates and these fairs and these rodeos and these small towns, and you're such an accessible band, and I'm sure that helps with the longevity of your career because your fan base is so loyal to you guys.
Well, I believe, I've always said that a band lives live. They live during their live show. We go into the studio and we record stuff that will outlast us, obviously. And so you want that to be perfect. But the live show is just full of all sorts of energy. And, occasionally there's a little mistake here and there, but that happens during a live show. And and sometimes a piece of equipment will go down, and you got to figure that out, and you got to figure out how to restructure your set so that they can fix that. And so I just love a live show. I love the spontaneity of a live show. There's certain things that we do during every show, but they don't always come out exactly the same for every single show. So every single live show's got its own fingerprint. It's got its own sense of, uniqueness. And then you got the energy from the audience. They give us their energy and we sort of give it back to them. I love playing live. It's always going to be my favorite thing to do, and I'll be one of those guys that goes out there with my walker, come on stage. Yeah, I'm ready, boys. Let's do this. 1, 2, 1, 2. Yeah, that'll be me.
Hey, I want to say congratulations. Recently, you guys were inducted into the Oklahoma Music Hall of Fame. And you guys are obviously, the executive even mentioned that you're known for your significant contributions to, there it is right there. Yeah. Can we?
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. What does that recognition mean to you personally, obviously with the roots in Oklahoma and being recognized in that way?
Well, I still don't have the words to describe the feeling that we were having, that we were all having that night, the feelings we were having. When I think about it, I think about we're in there with people like Merle Haggard and Joe Diffie. And we had just lost the great Toby Keith right before our induction ceremony. So we did a tribute to him that night. And it just amazing Oklahoma artists. You don't realize how many Oklahoma artists there are until you go down to the museum and you just start walking around and you see all these pictures on the wall of people who have been inducted before you. And, songwriters, great songwriters like Jimmy Webb and Tommy Collins. It's just amazing the number of Okies that there are who have made such a contribution to music, and not just country music, but popular music as well. So it's overwhelming. It really is. It's an amazing honor that I'll never be able to describe.
What was the ceremony like? Did you get to,
brother?
Did you get to take it in? Was it emotional? Was the family there? Tell us a little bit about what that was like.
The ceremony, it was a hectic day. We got there and we loaded in, and we had some technical issues with the sound equipment. And so we had to deal with that. A couple of things were different about my band that night. I had a couple of guests in town to do our induction. Also members of the Oklahoma Music Hall of Fame was two guys from the band Restless Heart. I'm sure your listeners will remember the band Restless Heart. Greg Jennings had driven in from Nashville, and my buddy David Ennis, the keyboard player, had driven in from Waco, Texas. And it's the first time they'd seen each other since Restless had disbanded. And anyway, they wanted to play our set with us that night. And I said, hell yeah. It just so happened I had just lost a keyboard player. So I needed a keyboard player, and it sure as hell didn't hurt having another great guitar player in the band with us. So I was like, man, let's do it. So I wrote up some charts weeks before that, sent them out. The guys learned my music. We added a Restless Heart song to our set so that we could feature those guys. Even my ex-wife, whom I'm still really great friends with, drove in from Nashville to be there, which was very, very special for me. My son was there. One of my country music mentors that I grew up, playing in his band when I was just a kid, a man named Joe Farmer, was there. Several family members, several close friends that I'd grown up with. It was such an awesome ceremony. And the fact that, like I said, Greg and Dave were there to hand me this trophy right here. It was oh man, I still get kind of choked up when I talk about it. It's such a cool night. It really was.
I bet so. Well deserved. Congratulations to you. I want to talk about the Ricochet sound and specifically you guys' use of harmonies. It's such a signature part of your sound. Do you feel like harmonies, like you don't hear it a lot in modern music, but obviously in the 70s and 80s and 90s, with Eagles, I think of the Eagles and Fleetwood Mac and gospel music and obviously in country music. Do you feel like that's a little bit of a lost art?
Man, I'm glad you said that because I do feel that way. And you're right. You don't hear a lot of big vocal harmonies anymore in modern popular music, whether it be country music or, other genres of music as well. I think it is a lost art. I love the way voices sound when they're blended together. And it doesn't matter if it's, like you said, gospel, pop, rock, country, barbershop, whatever. I love the sound of vocals being blended together. That's just a beautiful, beautiful sound to me. And I grew up loving all kinds of music, but my parents were into country music. So I listened to a lot of traditional country growing up. And I remember when vocal groups, this was before the band era of country music, but when vocal groups like the Statler Brothers or the Oak Ridge Boys would come on the radio and I would hear that sound, I'd be like, oh man, that's so cool sounding. How do they do that? Because I could tell that they weren't all singing the same part. And I hadn't really learned yet about harmonies and how you have to sing different notes than what the lead singer is singing to make that sound happen, Later on, as I became a teenager and started listening to some Eagles music, I was playing in a band, sort of a kid band, just me and two other teenagers. And it turns out that the drummer knew how to sing harmonies. And he would sing along with me when I would sing a song. And then he would ask me to do the same thing when I didn't know how to do it. So he had to teach me how to do it. So the very first song I learned how to sing a harmony part on was the song Lion Eyes by the Eagles. So, and then after that, man, I was hooked on harmonies. I started learning. I had a high voice, so I started learning that third above part. That's what we call it in country music. It's the tenor part. It's the part just above the lead vocal. And I started, later on, I started learning how to sing the part below the lead vocal, which we call the baritone or the fifth below. So I was just enamored with that sound. Really huge Restless Heart fan growing up. When the band started coming out, Alabama was the first band I became aware of in country music. And then after that, it was Restless Heart and Exile. It's bands like, Southern Pacific. Gosh, there's just so many great vocal bands out there. And I wanted that sound for my band. So when, 1993 rolls around and I moved to Nashville to start trying to put together the band, I knew I wanted two things. I wanted a musical bed. I wanted our instrumental sound to be traditional country. Because like I said, I grew up listening to a lot of traditional country. So we already had a fiddle player and I really wanted a steel guitar player to go along with that. I love the sound of a great steel guitar. So I knew that we needed those two instruments. And I love that twangy electric Telecaster guitar sound like Buck Owens used to have with Don Rich and all the great singers that I looked up to had that cool tele guitar sound, that twangy kind of country sound. And so I wanted that to be a main feature in our sound as well. But then I also wanted what we call, what's become known as West Coast harmony. That's 5 parts, 2 parts above the lead vocal and 2 parts below the lead vocal. And so I knew
something like the Beach Boys.
Well, I think the Beach Boys are more, yeah, they're definitely West Coast, but I think they're more considered beach harmony. Okay. So they got like 3 parts above and maybe 1 part below, and it kind of depends on the song for them. But their parts are very intricate. Their parts aren't just parallel singing, what I call parallel, so that when the lead vocal goes up, so do the harmonies. When the lead vocal goes down, so do the harmonies. They do a lot of really cool choral. They were just geniuses. Brian Wilson was just a genius. The way he would build, and he not only built the vocal parts, he built every single note you hear in a Beach Boys record. The bass guitar parts, he would write it out. I saw a documentary one time on if you get a chance, watch the documentary, The Wrecking Crew. And Carol Kay, the bass player, used to talk about how she would go in with a sheet of music in front of her, and if she missed one little note, Brian could hear it. I mean, of course, it's the bass part, so it kind of stands out. But every single note that you hear on the bass guitar, or basically any instrument or any vocal of the Beach Boys, was written out. Specifically, he wanted those notes played. And they don't really do that in Nashville. You go in Nashville, you hand a musician what we call a Nashville number chart, and they kind of make up their own part. They follow along the chords that's in front of them, but they make up their own part. They make up their own solos. That's how that works in Nashville. It's a little bit more creative in the studio, whereas Brian Wilson created all that great Beach Boys music in his head and then portrayed it to the musicians that he wanted it played. So yeah, West Coast harmony basically is a little more like the Eagles, whereas the Beach Boys is beach harmony. It's something all of its own.
Dropping knowledge bombs here. You're helping us understand music theory. We appreciate that.
Hey, I'm a music nerd, dude. You don't want to get me started on this stuff.
The Brian Wilson thing, not to get too deep into the woods here, but yeah, I mean, he was sort of the mad genius, right? They always kind of talked about that he had some, maybe issues outside the studio, but in the studio, it was, near perfection. And I guess when we bring up harmonies, that's maybe the first band we should really bring up, right?
Oh, yes. I mean, probably so. I mean, I'm sure there was vocal groups out there singing harmonies that were lesser known than the Beach Boys, because harmonies isn't something that's new to music in general. I mean, think about the Gregorian monks. They would usually sing in unison, but eventually somebody figured out, that, hey, if we can join voices in unison, maybe somebody else could sing something else. And, so joining voices together is probably something that's as old as music itself. Funny thing about Brian Wilson, you mentioned, and his personal issues, he never got to hear his music in stereo because he was deaf in one ear because his dad used to beat him.
Oh, wow.
Never once did he ever get to, unless he would sit in front of speakers and turn his head one way, but he never got to hear the actual separation. And that was a big deal back in the 60s. So stereo recording where, certain instruments are coming out in one speaker and certain other instruments are coming out in the other speaker. And it makes that really cool, almost surround sound type, as close as you could get to surround sound back then was stereo. But Brian never got to hear his music in stereo.
We'll talk about harmonies, and I know your time's limited. We just got a couple more for you. Let you get out of here. But, I think of, and you guys have played the Grand Ole Opry a million times at this point, but the Grand Ole Opry, right, where you would have 4 people or 5 people around one microphone, and they would be all the instrumentation that you would need. You can throw all this instrumentation on, but the most natural sound is the voice. That's the instrument where it all kind of comes together. And so it's just got me thinking about some of that music history. And tell us about your experiences playing the Opry.
Well, we just recently got invited back to the Opry. We've only got to play it twice in recent years. We played it last August, right before the release of our new album. And then we played it in 2022 in October. And that particular performance, the October of 2022 performance, was our first time back in 22 years.
Oh, wow.
But back in the 90s, we used to play it, every time we had a night off and we were in town, we would let the Opry folks know, hey, Ricochet's in town for this particular weekend or this particular day. If you're looking for someone to do a matinee performance on a Tuesday. And I remember some of the guys used to get really mad. It's like, man, we only got 2 days in town and now we got to go do a performance. And I said, guys, wait a minute here. Think about this for a second. I want you to think about when you were a kid, what was your biggest dream? It was to have a recording contract and be in demand and play the Grand Ole Opry. I mean, let's do it. I told my manager, I said, hey, I am all about the Opry. As far as I'm concerned, of course, now I wasn't married and I didn't have, a family to spend time with back then. So I was like, anytime we're in town, as far as I'm concerned, Opry calls, we say yes. That's my vote. So you can put that down. You can write that down in stone because that's always going to be my vote for the Opry. And it still is. I still call up my manager, and it's a little bit more difficult now that my band is based out of Oklahoma, but I still call up my manager and say, hey, we're on our way to South Carolina to do a show Saturday, February or whatever. See if the Opry needs us a day or even 2 days prior to that. We'll come and we'll do do a matinee performance if that's what they want. I just love playing that stage, especially when you step on that sacred circle, that piece of wood that came out of the old original Ryman Auditorium, and you just look, and the sound is always amazing. They got top-notch sound crew there that can get everything on and off within minutes. I don't know how they do it, but it's the longest running radio show in country music history, maybe music history. I don't know, but it is an honor and a privilege and a nerve-wracking experience all at the same time every time we play the Opry, because I still get nervous. That's the only stage I still get nervous on. And I feel the nerves from my band members. Like the last time we played it was the first time my current bass player, Bruce Bennett, had ever played it. And so I made mention of it that night. I said, hey, folks, I'm not going to lie. I still get nervous every time I stand on this sacred circle, but I guarantee you, as nervous as I am, I ain't half as nervous as this guy right here standing next to me. So I called him out, and he said after that, he was fine. So it's always an honor. Always such a cool experience to play the Opry.
This is the Midwest Mixtape Podcast, joined here with Heath from Ricochet, and we're live in the Barn Studio. Going to be coming into town for the Washington County Fair, Potosi, Missouri, Friday, August 9th, which is tomorrow. You'll be on the road soon, I bet.
Well, yeah, true. We're going to leave tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. from my ranch. So, yeah, I got to get up early tomorrow.
One more, we'll let you get out of here, Heath. Take us back to the mid-'90s. You signed the record contract. I mean, you play all the South, right? And then you signed the record contract, maybe 94, 95. And, you have that What Do I Know comes out, top 5 in 96, and then you followed up with Daddy's Money. What do you remember most about that time, and how much success you guys started out with?
Well, I remember how it seems like it took forever to get the contract. We first started negotiating with Columbia Records in, I want to say 94. They had come out to hear us at a club in Missouri. It was in, I believe, probably was the Silver Bullet, when the first time somebody came out to hear us from Nashville. And then, yeah, it was a guy named Ron Chancey, who ended up being our producer at the time, came out to listen to us there at the Bullet, and he convinced his son, Blake Chancey, who had just gotten the job at Columbia Records as the A&R director. Now, A&R, for those of your listeners that aren't in the music business, A&R means artist and repertoire. So their job is to not only find the artist to sign to the label, but also help them find music to record for their projects. So that's probably the coolest job to have at a record label, if you don't mind traveling and listening and going to nightclubs and listening to bands and just, I mean, who wouldn't love that job? If if I weren't a musician and I was just a music executive, that's the gig I would want right there.
Yeah,
not president of the label. I don't want that job because that's too much of a headache. I want the A&R gig. So, excuse me. Blake had come out to the show in St. Louis to listen to us. And he really didn't want to sign us, but mostly because it was it was a pet project of his dad. His dad had recorded a couple of demos on us. His dad was a very famous producer in Nashville at the time, or back in the 80s. He produced the Oak Ridge Boys and Billy Crash Craddock and T. Graham Brown and several different people. And so Blake didn't want the first artist that he was just going to sign to be somebody that his dad was associated with. So he was going to say no matter what. But he was going to have somebody else do it. He brought a guy named Cliff Aldridge with him to St. Louis to listen to us. And then after they flew back to Nashville and they had their Monday morning meeting, they're all sitting in the conference room. And Alan Butler, the president of Columbia, says, "Well, Blake, what you guys think about this band you went to listen to in St. Louis?" And before Blake can say anything, Cliff speaks up and says, "I think it's the best damn live band I've ever heard." So Blake, what was Blake going to say at that point? He just looked at Cliff and said, "Well, yeah, they're good." I mean, he said, they're my dad's band. I mean, my dad's got something to do with them. And all the, anyway, everybody was like, "Well, we trust y'all's opinion. So we're going to at least give them a little budget to go in and do a 4-song project." So they gave us something like $15,000 to go in and record 4 songs. They call that a developmental project. And so they reviewed the developmental project, and by golly, all 4 of those songs ended up on the first album. So they liked it, gave us a full-blown deal, and, the rest is history.
That's amazing. Ricochet, Washington County Fair, Potosi, Missouri, Friday, August 9th. The Midwest Mixtape Podcast and the Barn, we're going to be there. We can't wait, especially that now that we hear that this is like a special set. So if you're listening to this and you're in the Missouri, Potosi area, Washington County area, you got to get out and see Ricochet. Heath, we really appreciate your time today, man, and enjoyed this chat.
Chad, what a pleasure. I always enjoy doing this kind of thing, and you did your research. I appreciate that. Trust me, I've done interviews where people just said, all right, well, tell the folks your name and what you do with the band. It's like, this dude didn't even know my name. That's happened before. But thank you for doing your research, and I want to thank your listeners and your viewers for 30 years of allowing me to do something I love for a living. This has been a dream come true for me, and if it were all to end tomorrow, I would be satisfied. I'm so pleased and so grateful to your listeners.
We'll end it right there. Thanks, man. We'll see you tomorrow night.
Take care, brother.
All right, man.